Okay, today we're going to look at Lesson 10, and your I can statement or learning objective is I can solve quadratic equations with the quadratic formula. So we're still solving our quadratic equations like we were doing yesterday. We're just going to do it a different way. So the quadratic formula is especially helpful for solving quadratics when they can't be factored. Occasionally, you have some quadratic functions that you just cannot factor. It's not possible. So the quadratic formula is the way you solve those. You can also use the quadratic formula if you're struggling to factor or can't find the factors. You can use the formula and it'll work out and give you the same solutions. So hopefully you've seen the quadratic formula before. Hopefully this is not brand new information to you, but working with it might be. So we have negative b, or we like to say the opposite of b, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, you're given ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0, where a is not 0. So this is a quadratic. We know we have two solutions for a quadratic, and that's why we have the plus or minus here. So the plus gives you one solution, the minus gives you the other, okay? And just like I think we talked about before, maybe we didn't, but the quadratic formula, because it has the exponent of 2, we have two solutions. They don't have to be two different solutions, but there has to be two solutions, okay? So we're going to look at a couple different things, and then we're going to practice using the quadratic formula to solve quadratic equations. A couple reminders, this is a recorded video, so I am moving quicker than I would if we were in person, so keep that in mind. You're welcome to pause, rewind, rewatch whatever you need to as we go through, and if you have questions or comments, concerns, make sure you let me know. Okay, the next thing we need to talk about is the discriminant. So you find the discriminant of the quadratic equation by doing b squared minus 4ac. So b squared minus 4 times a times c. If you get a positive number, that means you have two real solutions. If you get a 0, there's just one real solution. And if you get a negative number, that means there are no real solutions. Your solutions are imaginary. And today, we're going to see both real and imaginary solutions. Okay, so when we're talking about real solutions, so you get real numbers as your solutions, those correspond with x-intercepts on the graph. So if you have one real solution, it just touches the x-axis in one spot. If you have two real solutions, then it's going to hit the x-axis at two locations. If you have imaginary solutions, so you have an I, a square root, or a negative in your answer, that means that those are non-real solutions, and that means that your graph doesn't touch the x-axis. So those are pretend solutions, and they're out here hovering away from the x-axis. Okay, here's our first example. The first thing I want you to do is label A, B, and C. Okay, you can do that a couple different ways. A is always in front of x squared, so you can label it this way. And then B is in the middle next to x. And then C is the constant. It's that number on the end. So you can label them that way. You can write them down. And I kind of like that better, especially when you're first getting started, just so you can see those different numbers. So A is 1, B is -5, and C is -11. Okay, so we're going to use those three numbers in our quadratic formula. I'm going to write it again, -b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, this is a formula that you need to memorize. It's not going to be given to you on the ACT or anything like that, so you do need to memorize it. There are lots of songs and tricks to help you memorize it. You can find those on YouTube. I didn't include any here. I always make my freshmen listen to it when we would look at quadratics for the first time. So there are some good videos on there and little catchy things, but right now, we're just going to focus on the formula itself and plug in the numbers in. So I'm going to plug 1 in for A, -5 in for B, and -11 in for C. Okay? So the opposite of B, so the opposite of -5 is +5. And I have plus or minus the square root. So b squared, and I'm using parentheses, so I have negative 5 squared, and then minus 4, and then times a is 1, and times c is negative 11, and that's all over 2 times our a, which is 1. Okay? I try to use the different colors there to show you where things are going, but you're going to plug them in that same way every time. Use parentheses. When you're plugging a number in, put it in parentheses. I know it seems like extra work or extra typing in the calculator, but really it's not that bad, and it helps you get your signs correct. Now, you cannot type this whole thing in the calculator. So what I want you to do is you can type what's underneath the radical. So I'm going to grab my calculator, and I'm going to do parentheses negative 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 11. Okay, you can type that part in the calculator, but that's it. Don't type the radical in there. All right, so I got 69. So I have 5 plus or minus the square root of 69 all over 2 times 1 is just 2. Okay, now we have to see if we can simplify that radical. So we can break this down into our prime factors. So 1 won't really help us. Can we divide it by 2? No. Can we divide it by 3? We can. We get 3 and 23. Neither of those can be broken down any farther, so we're going to leave it as is. Now, in Math Excel, I think that you can type it this way. There is a button that gives you the plus or minus. Down there, it gives you the little bar that you can use like for parentheses and squared and stuff. I think you can use that plus or minus symbol. So x equals this. I forgot to put the x equals at the beginning. And then up at the formula. But so x equals this. In Math Excel, it may want you to split it up, and if it does, it'll be 5 plus the square root of 69 all over 2, and then 5 minus the square root all over 2. Okay, and then occasionally you might see it broken up like this. I'm fine with either of these two answers. Whatever Math Excel takes is good for me. But you could see it like this, x equals 5 over 2 plus the square root of 69 over 2, and 5 over 2 minus the square root of 69 over 2. So if you see that, I want you to recognize that all three of these answers mean the same thing. Okay, I do think you might have some multiple choice questions that have your answers like this. I can't remember for sure, but just know these are just separated, okay, but they mean the same thing. Okay, here's example number 2. 7x squared minus 13x minus 2. So I'm going to label A, B, and C. So A, B, and C. So my A is 7. My B is negative 13. And my C is negative 2. So I'm going to use that in my quadratic formula. I'm going to write the formula down again. Just so you can get in the habit of it. Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. So first we do the opposite of b. So the opposite of negative 13 is positive 13. And we have plus or minus the square root. So b squared. So we have negative 13 squared minus 4 times 7 times c, which is negative 2, all over 2 times a, which is 7. Okay. So again, I can do the stuff that's under the radical in my calculator. So I'm going to grab that. I'm going to do parentheses, negative 13 squared minus 4 times 7 times negative 2, and I get 225. So 13 plus or minus the square root of 225 over 2 times 7 is 14. Now, 225, let's check that. What's the square root of 225? 15. All right, that works out good for me. So I have 13 plus or minus 15 all over 14. Now, Math Excel is not going to want you to put that in as your answer. Okay, so you're going to have to do these separately. You're going to treat it like the top has parentheses around it. So you're going to do 13 plus 15 all over 14 and 13 minus 15 all over 14, and then simplify that down. So 13 plus 15 is 28 over 14, and then 13 minus 15, that's negative 2 over 14, and those simplify to 2 and negative 1/7. Okay, and you could have done those in the calculator. It would have worked out just the same, but I wanted to show you how it works. You have to do the addition or subtraction on top and then divide. So if you just type this in the calculator, you have to type it in as a fraction, so the top over the bottom, or you're going to have to put the tops in parentheses for it to work out correctly. Okay, let's look at number 3. So your A is 1, your B is 6, and your C is negative 5. So let's plug those into our formula. So the opposite of B, so that's negative 6, then plus or minus the square root. B squared, so that's going to be 6 squared minus 4 times A is 1, C is negative 5, and that's all over 2 times A, which is 2 times 1. Okay, so let's simplify, and I forgot the x again. So x equals negative 6 plus or minus the square root. Again, in your calculator, we can do 6 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 5, and that gives us 56. So the square root of 56 all over 2, or not 2a, sorry, just 2 times 1 is 2. All right, now we need to break down the radical of 56. We did this back, I think it was the end of the first trimester. So hopefully you all got to this. If you didn't, I'm going to show you how to do it real quick. So you're going to take the number 56. You're going to break it up into factors. So I can do 56 divided by 2 is 28. So 2 times 28. I know 28 is 4 times 7. 4 can be broken up into 2 and 2. 7 can only be broken up into 1 times 7. So now I'm going to look for pairs. Here's a pair of 2's. Nothing else is a pair. So I'm going to bring the 2 out front. And then I have a 2 and a 7 left over, so that's 14. I'll put that back in the house. These are a pair. They can come on the outside. Everything else stays in. So I have negative 6 plus or minus 2 square root of 14 over 2. Now, there's this 2 on the bottom. Well, I know that this is a 2 and this is even. So I'm going to pull out the GCF of 2. Okay, so it leaves me with negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 14 all over 2. Our 2's divide out, and that leaves us with x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 14. Okay, and again, you can separate it. You can have negative 3 plus the square root of 14 and negative 3 minus the square root of 14. Okay, but I think you can leave it this way in Math Excel. Okay, here's number 4. We're going to list out A, B, and C. So A is 1, B is 8, and C is 25. Okay, I'm going to plug those in. Just for time's sake, I went ahead and wrote out the shell of the formula, and I'm just going to plug things in where they go. So the opposite of B, so the opposite of 8 is negative 8. I'm going to do B squared, so 8 squared minus 4 times A is 1, C is 25, and then all over 2 times A, so 2 times 1. All right. So, and that's x equals. So I have negative 8 plus or minus. Now, I can do this in my calculator. So 8 squared, we'll grab that. So 8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 25 is negative 36. So we have the radical of negative 36 all over 2. All right, now, what do we know about a negative? If there's a negative in the radical, we're going to pull out an I. So we have negative 8 plus or minus. I'm going to leave a space. I'm going to say I over 2. So now I need to do the square root of 36. Okay, so that's I square root of 36. 36 is a perfect square. It's 6 times 6, so that's just going to simplify to 6i. Okay, so this is an imaginary solution. It's not real. Now I can do what I did earlier. All of these are even, so I'm going to pull out my greatest common factor of 2. That leaves with negative 4 plus or minus 3i all over 2. Those cancel out or divide out, and we're left with negative 4 plus or minus 3i. Okay, now, I know that that's a little bit different. You're doing a few different things, but you should be able to do your example in Math Excel just like this one. Okay, you'll just have different numbers to use. Okay, number 5, our last example. First, we need to get it in standard form. So we need to move the 2x to the other side and that negative 4 over. So it's going to be x squared minus 2x plus 4 equals 0. Now, I can say that A equals 1, B equals negative 2, and C equals 4. Now, I'm going to plug those in. So the opposite of B, so that's 2, plus or minus B squared, the square root of B squared, so that's negative 2 squared, minus 4 times A times C, all over 2 times A. All right? So we've got 2 plus or minus the square root. And again, we can grab our calculator. So parentheses, negative 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 4. That gives me negative 12. That's all over 2. Right, I need to take this the square root of negative 12 and break it down. So we're going to take out the negative, and that gives me the square root of 12. I can break 12 up into 3 times 4. 4 breaks up into 2 times 2. There's a pair of 2's, so I'm going to change it to 2, square root of 3, and we've got the I. Okay, so 2 plus or minus 2i square root of 3 all over 2. You notice they have the greatest common factor of 2. Oh, guys, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that I didn't scoot the paper. Okay, so here's what I was doing on this side. So I took out the negative and made it an I. I broke up 12 into 3 and 4, 4 into 2 and 2. There's a pair of 2's. I bring that out front. I leave the 3 inside, and I just brought it over here. So I have a GCF of 2, so that's going to leave me 1 plus or minus I square root of 3, and that's all over 2. The 2's divide out, so we have x equals 1 plus or minus I square root of 3. Okay, now I know that these problems require a little bit more work, and I understand that, and I know they might be a little difficult, but if they are, I'm here to help you with whatever you need and to answer any questions. You can always hit Ask My Instructor, send me an email, ask me in the Google Meet, whatever you need to do. But I think your assignment is only 5 or 6 problems, and we're going to spend 2 days on it. So you have plenty of time to work and get help if you need it. So use these problems, do your homework in Math Excel, and let me know if you need me. Have a great day.